Gero here for Umbra Games with the review of Riders Republic, released October 2021 for PS4 and 5 and Xboxes, published and developed by Ubisoft. I'm always looking for a fun extreme sports game, and Riders Republic brings the extreme. There's downhill mountain biking, bike stunts, skiing and snowboard racing and snow tricks, and wingsuit stunting and rocket pack racing. As a newcomer to Riders Republic, you work hard on gaining reputation and sponsors, getting access to bigger public events in each of the sports. Now, just to clarify, even though that sounds like 6 categories of events, there are only 5, throwing all the flying events into one aerial category, then bike race and stunt and snow race and stunt. The game takes place on an open map featuring snowy, super tall mountains all the way to some dry desert valleys. There are a ton of fast travel points, and by selecting an event on the map, the game will automatically transport you to that closest point. For completing events, you gain stars, which accumulate into rewards, including new content. You also gain career experience in whichever of the 5 categories gear you used for it. The progress tab of your menu shows the total number of events, including boss events, so you'll have things unlocked by a combination of these 2 forms of progression. In single player, in addition to a star for completing the event, there are 3 sub-objectives for each one. These challenges include things like finishing a race without crashing, or hitting a certain score threshold in a stunt event, or using a specific piece of equipment to get through it. Stars seem to be infinite. I noticed some people in the thousands, but we were in the 300s when finishing the game. We did try and play this as a co-op game, and unfortunately you're not eligible for sub-objectives when you play events multiplayer. You don't play co-op team style or anything, you just play versus, where it's just you and your group, up to 6, competing. So you don't even get competition in multiplayer except what you bring with you. No AI. That is, unless you're doing a mass race. Every so often you'll see a mass race event pop up where up to 64 live players compete in a series of longer events that incorporate multiple forms of travel. You'll change gear automatically at checkpoints. If you don't have new events opened up to play, then you'll need to work on your career experience for that category. Each one seemed to have different levels for unlocking all events and also for making boss events appear, including the final one. And yeah, the main disadvantage is approaching this as a full co-op game, so I'm pretty sure the career experience intends for some replaying of events to try for sub-objectives over and over. When you don't have that option in multiplayer, you're kind of just left grinding the same events with no real purpose for the same results. There are also solo events you can find on the map that are a bit more challenging in nature, riding thin rails and platforms, for example, while riding a bike. There are also a group of crazy individuals that do extreme sports, and as you find their gear and obtain certain star rankings, you'll get those events open as well. Now, it wouldn't be an Ubisoft open world game without a ton of collectibles, and so we have the Riders Republic balloons, of which there are 500. There are also a dozen or so relic pieces of equipment to find, and scenery spots to stand in view. The scenery points give a star for activating them, and the balloons seem to be little cash rewards. I didn't pop enough of them personally to see if different thresholds of balloons gave additional rewards. Cash can be used at the main hub to buy some customization for your character in the form of apparel. You can also, of course, use real money. There seemed to be some clothing that was not obtainable with in-game money, but real money only. There are only a handful of items available on what seemed to be weekly and daily timers, and everything was pretty expensive in in-game money, so customization was kind of a letdown. Actual usable gear, like new bikes and snowboards, are obtainable through what seem to be random rewards as you increase your career level. Gear has stats and a gear level, and you always, at least for as long as we played the base game, seem to get better and better scores with possibility of higher rarity level each time we received one. You can choose which piece you want to use at the start of an event. You can navigate the map with any piece of gear you have and switch pretty easily from a radial menu. Once I unlocked the rocket pack though, that was my primary form of getting around. L1 takes off in an upward fashion with the rocket pack, and X will give you a horizontal takeoff. You can speed up with R2 and slow down with L2, and you also have boost. When using the wingsuit, you have no form of propulsion, just gravity and wind currents on your side. Took a little bit of getting used to, but ended up being one of our favorite types of events. Rocket pack events were all races, whereas these wingsuit events were going for points, flying as close to the edges of walls and the ground as possible, and under structures to generate points. You can dive for some speed, flare up for a slowdown, which will give you some altitude. Wingsuit events seem to need at least 50,000 points to truly complete and get your full experience reward. Snow racing switch between skis and snowboards. You hold R2 for acceleration and can slow quickly for immediately needed turns. You can also use skis and snowboards for trick levels, which again require a 50,000 point threshold for experience rewards. The bike functions pretty similarly, but also has a sprint meter so you can get some faster speeds. The game's trick system for land-based events functions the exact same across all sports. You press a combination of face button to execute different moves. For example, pressing X and then triangle will do front flips as long as you're holding triangle. Pressing triangle and X will do back flips. Square to circle is spin one direction, circle and square the other, then all the other combinations do famously named trick moves. Now, as a Tony Hawk guy, for some reason this took me a bit to get comfortable with. I wanted to jump and do a trick by holding a button or direction, and with Tony Hawk, as long as you stop at 180 or 360 of a trick, you're going to land just fine. The tricks here, sometimes the correct rotation for one will be 540 degrees, and you won't see a landing point again until 1260 or beyond, having you land in a crash. You don't get fewer points for repeating tricks over and over in an event, so if you get frustrated, you can just find one you know and go for it. You can also link tricks together by grinding on rails during snow events too for combo points. One thing that could have possibly added a little more spice to the racing is giving an advantage for pulling off stunts during the race. Refresh your sprint meter a bit on a bike or give you a speed boost or something. Seems a little bit like a wasted opportunity. You can rewind yourself during events at any time, like if you bail a trick or lose too much air too fast in the wingsuit. If you miss a checkpoint, the game will also restart you automatically in front of that checkpoint in 3 seconds. This worked pretty okay most of the time, but rewinding in the rocket pack could really get frustrating, as could mashing circle to get up after a crash. It'd often take a string of rewinds just to get yourself back on track with it, especially with the horizontal takeoff that it'd try to force you into. We found the map a little difficult to use sometimes too. For some reason, Ubisoft wanted to show 1,000 player icons, who knows if they're even real, as they flow around the map. Guessing maybe this is the reason they don't show you the event icons on the entirety of the map at a time, and just the region your cursor is on. When 2 events pop up as a result of a career advance, and you do one of them and then go looking for the other one, you have to move to each region and hope it's not buried behind something else. There are filters, but again, it's a per region thing, whichever your cursor is on. I think overall too, the course designs were a bit too simple, and I know this is an issue you have when you put a game in real life settings. There's only so much you can do with a downhill skiing track, but seeing as how bikes, skis, and snowboards all pretty much handle the same, you really didn't feel too much differentiation between events. Trick sets did go to some city-like areas and some interesting land formations, and the wingsuit had a couple courses that had you flying through narrow canyons and some suspended pipes and whatnot in the air, but overall, when we'd done a dozen or so events in a sport, we were ready to move on. The game's soundtrack is a pretty huge collection of songs available on 5 different radio stations, and it includes a ton of artists ranging from Offspring to Square Pusher. Surely you'll find some tunes you recognize and can shred to. In summation, there are 5 categories of events taking place in diverse landscapes, quite a bit of content, even though it starts to feel kinda samey. Fully co-op as long as you don't mind missing alternate objectives, which it kinda seems like single player was the aim here. Customization that's on limited timers and pushes the microtransactions. Quite a few collectibles, and a trick system where your enjoyment mileage may vary. Rated as an open-world extreme sports game, Riders Republic scores a 61 out of 100 on my 0 to 100 scale, where 50 is average. This is Gero for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching.